Off kind of with this thing called kettlebells. So realize kettlebells doesn't quite fall in line with the other things we talked about here. It really should be on the next slide, but somehow it got put on this one. I really don't know, but it's really more connected to the other one. But we'll talk about it and just keep that in mind. Have you guys ever heard of kettlebells? No? No? Yeah? What's a kettlebell?
It's just like a weight with a handle.
Yeah, it's pretty much a kettlebell is simply a weight with a handle. So weight with a handle is all it simply is. They're usually round, they can be square, and they have a handle. And really, they've come in popularity the last couple of years, but they've been around for actually a number of decades. Really, like 30, 40, 50 years they've been around. And really, the biggest thing about them is they're just more versatile because they have a handle, right? Think about if you're trying to pick up a big rock. Like, it can be really hard to pick it up, but if we add a handle to it, all of a sudden, I can pick it up with one hand instead of using my whole body, and we can swing it around or move it in different directions. And that's really what a kettlebell is. It just simply is something we can utilize to be more versatile because it has a handle. The final thing we want to talk about on this slide is something called isokinetics. Isokinetics. Isokinetics is a very unique way to move weights. Okay? It's not something probably most of you have done, and it's not something that most of you probably will ever be able to experience. Okay? Because it's not something that's natural for us. Isokinetics is basically the only way we can do isokinetics is truly to have a computer hooked up to a machine that helps us to move weights. Okay? And so what isokinetics are is it's still dynamic exercise. It's still dynamic exercise, but with isokinetics, the resistance is constantly changing with isokinetics so that you're constantly moving at the exact same speed. So think about like when I pick up this remote here, right? If I was to pick it up and like just pull it to here, is it moving the exact same speed through the entire movement? No, it's not. It may look like it, and it's very close with something this light, but it's actually moving at different speeds. So at the beginning it might be real fast, and then it gets a little slower, and then it gets faster. And you guys know this if you've ever picked up something heavy, right? Like when you pick up something heavy, you get it off the ground really quick, and then you struggle, and then all of a sudden you get to a point and it's like, it's real easy again, right? And so this is like using the advantage of our muscles. And so isokinetics, what it is it's a machine that forces you to do the movement at the exact same speed the entire time. How it does this is when you're really strong, when we can move really fast, it adds more resistance to slow us down. And as we're not as fast, as we're not as strong, it reduces that resistance so we keep moving at the same speed. And that computer can make us move really, really slow, so it can make us move really, really fast. Does that make sense? This is there, and it's a way for us to do our movements. Why do you think that you guys haven't necessarily done these?
I mean, that seems kind of advanced. I mean, it's constantly calculating how much you're pulling and releasing.
Yeah, so this computer program, it's all done by computer. You're not really doing it. You just get a printout of results on it. The computer that does this and the machine that does this is pretty expensive. It's like 80 grand is how much it costs. Also, let's say you had access to it. Let's just say you could do this. Do you think it's the best way for us to build muscular strength and endurance? No, it's not. Why not?
Because the best way to build muscular strength and endurance is to do more, right?
Kind of. So it's not necessarily, we're still doing as much as we possibly can with these, like we do the others. But the reason is it doesn't translate to what we do every day, right? Think about like when you open your car door. Does it matter that your car door opens at the exact same speed the entire time? No, I don't think so. Like mine doesn't. Like I just open it up, right? Like I'm not worried about it. We just want it to open. And so what happens is even though we can train this way, it doesn't translate to what we do every day, so it's not as effective as the dynamic exercises that we've talked about before. Does that make sense? So more than likely, you're never really going to experience this. This is really meant for research, and it's meant for some rehabilitation of athletes, and not much more than that. Athletes won't even really use this machine that much because it's not that effective. Making sense? Cool. So what we want to do is we now want to talk about some of the different types of exercise that we can do when it comes to weightlifting, our muscular strength and muscular endurance. So different ways we can do it, and it's really talking about how do we have the resistance, or what kind of resistance are we using is more what we're talking about here. And there's lots of ways, and most of you guys are familiar with a lot of these. So the first one we have is machine weights. We have machine weights. What's a machine weight?
It's like to a machine.
A weight connected to a machine, kind of.
It's a machine that like take like legs for instance, like
Uh-huh.
you have like a set amount of weights on that machine that you can kind of like alter depending on like what your strength is and like see where you're at, and then there's like directions on how to do the exercises.
Okay, so a machine is a device that it guides you through the movement. Okay, so the resistance is on a track, it's on a fixed motion. So you can only kind of move the weights in a particular way, and it makes sure that we move weights in the correct way for the exercise. Does that make sense? Right, so a machine weight is a device that guides weight in the correct movement pattern, so we work out the muscles we want to work out correctly. Okay, with machine weights, those are good. Those are good because with a machine, if we think about a machine style lifting weights, right, are they safe or dangerous as far as it comes to injuries? Are they relatively safe or dangerous when it comes to actually using a machine?
I think they're safe.
They're mostly safe. It's very hard to actually get injured on a machine, right? Either you didn't follow the directions that were clearly written on the machine, or you stuck your hand in that one spot that says do not stick your hand here. That's pretty much how you get injured with a machine, right? So they're relatively safe. When you're using a machine, as long as you follow directions, is there any way that you could do the movement incorrectly?
Wait, the machine?
Yeah, with the machine. Not really, right? If we follow the directions, we're going to do the movement correctly. It forces us to move exactly how we're supposed to be moving to do that exercise. Does that make sense? Right? So they're relatively safe, and they make sure that we do things correctly. So machines are great in that way, but let's compare those to the other most typical way people lift weights, and that's with free weights. Free weights, by the name in them, are simply heavy objects that are free to move wherever. Right? They're free. They can go wherever. They can roam. They can move. Free weights, are they more dangerous or safer than machine weights? More dangerous. Why?
Because you can drop them easily, and there's no directions, I guess.
Okay, it's not on a fixed track, so it can literally go anywhere, and so we could drop it on ourselves, right? We could, have that fall or roll somewhere and cause an injury, right? Is it harder or easier to do, not harder or easier, when it comes to doing a particular exercise, can we do it wrong easier on a free weight or a machine? Does that question make sense?
Free weight.
So free weights, we can do the exercises incorrectly, right? And that could lead to more injuries of ourselves. So we can see that there's an advantage to machines. But when you think about it, professional athletes or collegiate athletes, or maybe some of you guys who were athletes, right? When you tended to lifted weights, or when you go to these places and see people lifting weights like professional athletes, do you see them using free weights or machines more? Free weights. Why would professional athletes use free weights more than machine weights if machines are safer and make sure that we do the movement correctly? Dynamic? So both of them move. If we do the exercise the same, we should move the same, right? Whether it's on a machine or a free weight. It's a good thought. Yes?
To be able to control, have more control than the machines, since the machine stays like the squatting one, it just goes straight up and down.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if they're a free weight, they'll have to be able to control it so it doesn't sway.
Ah, great. So that's kind of the reason we see professional athletes doing it, because when you lift with free weights, you actually see more benefits to your muscles than you do with machine weights. And for the reason he just said is because we have to keep it under control. In a machine weight, if I'm lifting something up over my head, all I have to do is get in that machine and simply just push up, because it's only going to go up, right? It's not going to go forward, it's not going to go back, and I really don't have to worry about it falling on me, right? So I just get to push up and don't worry about it, keep in balance or anything. But if all of a sudden I have a free weight that could fall, right, and it's on my head and I'm having to control exactly where it is, well, all of a sudden I start having to engage what we call auxiliary muscles in my back and in my abdomen and in my legs to make sure it stays exactly how I want it to stay, right? So, because when I push up, I can't just worry about pushing up, because if it's a free weight and I push up like this, is this going to be great? No, because it could start pulling me this way, right? Or what if I start to it starts to lean forward? Is that going to be good? No, it could cause injury, or backwards, right? So you start using more of these auxiliary muscles and we see additional benefits. Does that make sense? So with free weights, we tend to see people using them more because they'll see additional benefits, right? For a beginner, for someone who's just starting out, which way do you think we would encourage them to use? Machine weights or free weights? Machine weights, why?
Because they don't know the
Control their muscles, how they believe.
Yeah, they don't know how to do them properly, so it teaches them how to do it properly. It keeps them safe until they develop the muscular strength and the skills to be able to do it correctly, right? So in a more advanced lifter, we would encourage free weights because we see additional movements and they should know how to do it safely and do it correctly. Does that make sense? Let's talk about a little bit more of the advantages to free weights. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. When it comes to machine weights, right? How many exercise on a typical weight machine can you do?
1 or 2.
1 or 2, right? So if I have to do 1 or 2, how many weight machines would I need in order to be able to work out every muscle in my body, or at least most of the muscles in my body? 6? We'd probably need more than 6, right? Think about, okay, I did say every muscle or most muscles. Think about every exercise I could possibly think about doing. How many machines would I need? A lot. We would need like 50, 60, 70 machines, right? And is that going to take up a lot of room? Yeah, that's going to take up bigger than a basketball court. Our machines, how much do you think an average machine costs, like a weightlifting machine would cost? $1,000. So maybe some of them actually cost $2,000 and $3,000 a piece, right? And you got 70 of them. All of a sudden, that's like $140,000. And you got to have a basketball gym, and also you have to do maintenance on them every year because they wear out. They have mechanical parts. Let's talk about free weights for a second. To get a full set of free weights, to do any exercise I could possibly imagine, how much do you think that would cost to get a full set, the best that I could possibly get, like what they'll use in the Olympics in a couple months? How much do you think that might cost?
$500.
200.
I just was looking some up.
I got one.
400.
So we can definitely get some for that, but we're talking like the best of the best, and we're going to get a full set of them so we can do whatever we could possibly imagine. That's still going to be expensive, but it's still not going to be $140,000. It may cost us $30,000. Yeah, we're talking about full thing, not just a little bit. We're talking enough to like everything we could imagine, right? That could be $30,000, and that seems like a lot for just pieces of metal, and it is, but that's way cheaper than $140,000. Does that make sense? Also, how much room do you think that would take up? Not very much. It would take up like an average room, like an average office. In this particular room, it would take up like, not very much of it, right? So it fits in a lot smaller space. And then at the end of the day, do you have to do any maintenance on free weights?
No, just clean them.
Clean them occasionally, right? They're not going to like fall apart. They'll get a little rusty maybe if you don't clean them, or they get, something like that. But not really much maintenance that we have to do on it. So we can see that there are advantages and disadvantages to both. Does that make sense? Right? So we've got that. Realize another way that we can actually move weight or you have resistance is simply your body weight. Does your body weigh something? Yeah, it weighs something, and so we can use that as resistance. So push-ups would be an example, right? Or pull-ups are an example of using that. Realize squats, most people think that sitting down, standing up out of a chair, you need to have weight. Not necessarily. My body weighs something. Now, it's not the most in the world. My legs can move more than that, but we can use that as the actual resistance for our exercise. We can use resistant bands. So these are like giant rubber bands. What's special about resistance bands? What kind of resistance do resistance bands give that maybe is different than like free weights, most traditional free weights?
Like it resists you more the further.
Yeah. So we call it variable resistance. Resistance bands are a form of, variable resistance. So the further we pull them apart, the harder they get. So we can use a resistance band and actually make it harder or easier with the exact same piece of equipment. Does that make sense? And they make different styles. Some are really thin and easy, and some can be really, really thick and super hard to move at all. Okay? We then have exercise balls. Do you guys know what exercise balls are? What's an exercise ball?
Those are those balls that are like 5 to 10 pounds. Sometimes
Those are medicine balls.
Oh, they're medicine balls?
Yeah, so exercise balls aren't the ones that weigh a lot. These are those big, like, giant, fluffy ones that you see people running each other with, right? You know what I'm talking about? You see that you guys all watch the YouTube videos, right? Those are not the intended use. What are exercise balls actually used for?
They're like
Balance.
balance, yeah.
Okay, so they can be used for balance.
Core strength.
They can be used to help make a surface more unstable, so that it makes it so that we have to work harder to do it and engage more muscles. So, so we've got those half ones. They're called Bosu Balls, so it's just half of a ball. So with those, we can put them on the ground and stand on it, and then try to do exercises, and all of a sudden it makes it less stable, and so then I have to use more muscles to make sure I keep the weight where it's supposed to. We see an additional benefit. Sometimes, depending on how we use them, they can actually be something we use to assist us to do them correctly. I can take an exercise ball and put it in the small of my back, like a decent sized one, and lean up against the wall. And if I lean up against that ball and start to squat, it's actually going to help me to do the squat correctly until I learn how to do that myself. So we can use them to make exercise easier or harder. They're very versatile. The key with them is because they're balls and they tend to make things a little less stable, you do have to be careful. You have to think about what you're going to do. For some reason, I don't know why, they do make these really large exercise balls that are like 36 to 46 inches. Like a ball that literally fully inflated is like this big. In the lab that I worked in, we had those. And we had I had a friend in there named Tommy. Tommy was a good friend of mine in grad school. We did a lot of things together, really got along well. And so we had this kind of agreement that pretty much if someone asked us, like each other asked us to do something, we just didn't ask questions, we just did it. So one day Tommy comes in my office and says, hey, I need your help. And I was like, okay, cool. Got up out of my office, and literally like 20 yards from my office door was an entire gym that we use for research. But he was like, hey. And so I walk in there, and he's got this ball out, and he says, I need your help. And I'm like, with what? And he says, I want to get on it. All right, cool. So I just hold the ball, I hold my hand, and so he gets on this ball. It's like this tall, right? And so he gets on it, and I'm like, are you good? And he's like, yeah. So I let go of the ball and let go of his hand. I'm like, you sure? He's like, yeah. So I back off. I'm like, what are we trying to do, Tommy? He's like, I'm going to do a squat on it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Dumb. But whatever. So Tommy goes down, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, well, this is kind of impressive. And so he's going down and shaking real hard, and he gets all the way down. I'm like, oh, sweet. And he starts coming back up, and I was like, he might actually get this, but this is dumb. And so he gets to about here, and all of a sudden he becomes Superman. That ball under rolls from underneath him, and he launches into the air like Superman, and he comes down, and he puts his arm out, and he winds up pretty much breaking his wrist from this, right? So these are things like, it was awesome to watch, but not so good for Tommy in the long run for a couple weeks as his wrist was healing, right? And so we have to be careful with those types of things and to make sure that we're doing things that are safe, right? Thinking about things before we do them and using appropriate risk. Have we ever heard of something called vibration training? You guys ever heard of something like this? See one head shaking. Do you know what it is?
Not specifically. I've just seen like the ads of like the quarter ones that are like six-pack training kind of crap, you know?
Yeah, so what a vibration training is it's a metal plate that sits on the floor, and you plug it in, and you turn it on, and it actually shakes. It vibrates. Okay, it doesn't shake like an earthquake. It's like very small movements, kind of like think of like if you ever used like a lawnmower or like a weed eater, you know how it shakes a little bit? Something similar to that. And the idea is that you stand on this metal plate and you work out on it. You do the exact same workout you always do, just on this metal plate. The idea behind it is that shaking makes you unstable. It makes you have to engage all of these muscles to hold yourself, like, basically you see more of a benefit because you're trying to hold yourself steady. Does that make sense? However, research has shown, for the most part, that vibration training is worthless. It doesn't benefit your workout. So if you're ever trying to be sold something on an infomercial, don't buy it because it's not going to improve your workout. Does it hurt your workout? No. So if you could use one for free, it may be a fun experience just to try it out, but it's not going to make your workout better. Does that make sense? It's not working. Anyone ever done Pilates in here? No? So Pilates is a different way to get a muscular strength workout. So you typically do this in a group setting, and it's just a different way to get it. It's a really good workout, but it's definitely working on muscular strength and endurance. Some people love them, some people don't. There are other group exercise classes like boot camp and things called bodyworks that really is about weightlifting, muscular strength, muscular endurance, kind of in a faster paced group setting instead of on your own. And that's kind of what Pilates kind of is an example of that. We then have medicine balls. Medicine balls, someone was describing before, medicine balls are weighted balls that are soft. So they're balls that are soft and squishy, but they may weigh 5, 10, 20, 25 pounds. These are good because they can allow us to do things we can't do with a big metal weight. So like you, sir, if I had 25 pounds of metal, right, like a 25-pound metal weight, and I threw it at you, would you even try to catch it? Not at all. You're going to try to get out of the way as quick as possible. That's going to injure you, right? But with a medicine ball, because it's a softer ball, I could take a 25-pound medicine ball, and we could actually play catch with it. Now, you got to be ready for it. I can't just say, like, heads up and throw it at you. But if you were ready for it, you could catch that, and we could throw it back and forth, right, and not get injured. We could throw it on the ground. We could throw it up against a wall and do different things. Imagine if I took a 25-pound metal weight and threw it up against the wall. That's going to be dangerous or poke a hole in the wall, depending on what type of wall it is, right? With a medicine ball, we can actually do that. We then have suspension training. So suspension training, think about the Olympic rings. We got the Olympics coming up, so I'm kind of excited about it. I don't know how the coronavirus will affect the Olympics in Japan. I'm hoping maybe it'll drive down ticket prices and I can afford to go. That's what I'm hoping. Like, I'll risk getting a virus to go watch the Olympics. I might get quarantined, not be back to teach in the fall, but we'll see. We'll play that by ear, right? I'll take all online classes. Maybe I can do it that way. So, suspension training. Think Olympic rings. That's suspension training. You're using your body weight mostly to be your resistance and pulling it off the ground. Does that make sense? There's also a system called TRX that uses straps where we can actually put our feet in those straps. Not like super far off the ground, but close to the ground, and suspend our feet to do ab workouts or push-ups or things to use our body weight. Following so far? Right? Not too bad. And then the final thing is you have stones. So they make these things called Atlas stones, which are perfectly spherical granite stones that weigh a lot. And the reason these are so, people will pay this big money for these stones is because they're smooth, and so there's no handle, and so they're really hard to pick up. Even if they're not a lot of weight, they're hard to pick up, right? But realize at the end of the day, the reason I put stones on here is because it weighs something. And anything that weighs something and we can pick up can be a resistance and be used to build strength. This is how strength was built many, many years ago. They didn't have fancy weights and machines and this, that, and the other. They simply picked up big rocks and big trees and had to move them, and they got stronger and noticed that. And then all of a sudden, a buddy was saying, hey, I bet I can pick up a bigger rock than you can. And they're like, challenge accepted. And all of a sudden, we get the Olympics. Like, that's kind of the thought process. I can pick up a bigger rock than you. No, you can't. I'll give you, whoever gets the heaviest rock gets a gold medal. Right? Like that type of thing. Like, all of a sudden, we got the Olympics. It's not quite how it was invented, but it's how I imagine it all started. So, at the end of the day, anything that weighs something and is heavy to you can be used for muscular strength and endurance. Specifically, I'm just thinking rocks, because at the end of the day, you guys have seen a lot of rocks in your life, right?
Yes, I've seen.
Oh, okay, you've seen many rocks, right? If you were walking across campus today, as you were leaving, and you saw a rock and you picked it up, do you think anyone would say anything to you?
No, I probably think I'm weird.
No, I don't know if they'd think you're weird, but you could pick it up and no one's going to say anything. If you went through the next couple of months of your life and just when you saw like a decently big rock, you just picked it up and took it home, right? No one's going to stop you. No one's going to say anything. It's not a big deal. People don't care about rocks. But all of a sudden, very quickly, I can amass a set of weights at your house for free. Oh, it clicked in, right? You get a bag and you put some heavy rocks in it. All of a sudden, you lift it up. Awesome. I've given you free weights. This doesn't have to be something that costs you a lot of money or is hard. You don't even have to do that. Just go find big, heavy crap at your house. Gallons of water. Put a bunch of books that you never read in your book bag, right? You all have a whole bunch of textbooks from college you've never opened. You might as well use them for something. You paid a lot of money for them, right? Yes, sir.
So you're telling me we should go look for some big rocks and pick them up and walk to our car, put them in our car,
Sure.
and no one's gonna say nothing.
I don't think anyone's going to say that. I've picked up a lot of rocks in my life. Like I used to collect rocks because they were cool, like just different like kinds. No one has ever stopped me and said, you shouldn't pick up that rock. You know what I'm saying?
I understand, but that is still weird.
I'm not saying it's necessarily not going to get some looks occasionally, but honestly, think about it. Like, until I said this, if I went outside today, right after this class, and you guys were all hanging out there, and I just looked at the ground and like kind of saw a rock and just picked it up and like was walking around, like going to my car with it or going to my office with it, most of you would be like, I'm not sure what he's doing, and wouldn't even give it a second thought, is what I'm saying. Like, yeah, it's a little weird.
Okay, so it's a rock that you can hold in your hand, not with 2 hands.
Well, I mean, it depends on what you want. Like, if you want to pick up a giant boulder, go for it, right? I'm not saying that these things aren't necessarily like people aren't going to like kind of look at it and be like, that's kind of odd. I'm just saying, like, you don't have to necessarily go spend big money on weights. You don't like that idea, dig rocks up in your yard maybe, right? Like, do it in the middle of the night. That makes it less creepy, right? Like, middle of the night, 2 a.m., go pick it. No. But you see what I'm saying, right? That would be the funniest thing ever. Someone pulls up to your yard at like 2 a.m. and just picks up a rock, puts it in the back of their truck, and drives off. Like, it'd be great. Okay, I have no clue where we're at now. I have lost it. But this makes sense. Like, it's really, you can use anything to be your weight. And I just like, might as well use some rocks. Most people pay you to take rocks off their property. Just saying, there are people that get paid for that. Finally, the last thing we've got is circuit or HIIT training. Circuit or HIIT training. We've talked about HIIT training before. What does HIIT stand for?
High intensity
Interval training.
High intensity interval training or circuit training. These are very similar when it comes to weightlifting. I tend to think of them a little bit differently. So circuit training is doing exercises back to back to back without a break. So maybe I do 10 push-ups and then 10 pull-ups and then 10 squats. And I do those 10, 10, 10 all in a row without taking a break. And then I circle back around and do that a couple times. And so with that particular workout, I can build muscular strength and endurance in a short amount of time, right? Because there's not a lot of break. And I'm giving, where there's not any breaks, each muscle group gets a break, right? My arms get a break while I'm doing my squats and like so on and so forth. So we can get a quick workout in. HIIT training, high intensity interval training, is where maybe what we do is we lift, we say maybe there's 135 pounds and I try to lift it over my head as many times as I can in a minute. And then I'm going to take like 30 seconds break or a minute break, and then I'm going to see how many times again I can lift it in a minute. So I'm doing the same exercise over and over and over again at a high intensity, instead of circuit training is a bunch of different exercises rotating through them. Does that make sense? Pretty seamless there. So we've got a lot of the basics, kind of the things that we can talk about, what we can use as resistance and some of the different ways we can lift or some of the different considerations. And so at this point, we're ready to build a workout program, right? We've got the information to build a workout program. And to do that for general health purposes, we're going to use that fancy thing we talked about a couple of times called the FIT principle, right? So we're going to use that. Realize it's the same thing that we've been talking about, but it's going to be different for muscular strength and endurance training than it was for cardiorespiratory endurance training. Two different things. So they're going to look a little bit different. So we'll go through each of them and talk about it. Realize what we're going to talk about is for general health purposes. So if you want to get a little bit stronger, a little bit more muscular endurance, and you want to see the health benefits from it, this is how we're going to do that. For most people, this is plenty. However, if you want to build more muscular strength, if you want to be more of an athlete, if you want to get a little bit deeper into this, this changes a lot and gets a lot more complex. But when we start doing that, there's a lot more things to consider. So we're going to keep it very basic. And if you get into it, you can kind of talk to me or figure out like, how do we make this more complex to work out more? Does that make sense? So there are professional athletes that follow this same kind of guidelines, the FIT principle, just to a much more in-depth status. So what's the F in FIT stand for? Frequency. So how many days per week? So remember, cardiorespiratory endurance was 3 to 5 days a week, striving for 5 days. Well, with muscular strength and endurance, it is 2 to 3 days per week. 2 to 3 days per week. Each day that you work out, you need to work out most of the muscles in your body. Okay, so we're not splitting it up. When we do it 2 to 3 days per week, we're going to work out pretty much every muscle in my body, each of those 2 to 3 days doing muscular strength and endurance. And those days need to be non-consecutive. So we're saying not back-to-back. So if we're going to do 2 days a week, we don't want to do Monday, Tuesday. Heck, we probably don't want to do Monday, Wednesday. We want to space them out as evenly as possible. So a Monday, Thursday. If we're going to do 3 days a week, well, maybe a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday would be an appropriate way, right? Trying to space that out, non-consecutive days, because your muscles need time to recover, okay? So that's the frequency. What's the I stand for? Intensity. So remember, intensity, we talked about measuring heart rate and RPE and things with cardiorespiratory endurance. Intensity, when it comes to muscular strength and endurance, is all about the weight. How much are you actually moving? What resistance are you using? So examples of this could be your body weight would be the intensity. It could be I'm moving 10 pounds. It could be I'm moving 200 pounds, right? Literally the intensity is what we're looking for. The key with it is it needs to be heavy enough to fatigue you, heavy enough to make you tired, but light enough that you can actually complete your workout. So what we're saying is if you want to lift a weight over your head 10 times, we need to be heavy enough when you get to number 10, like you're like, oh, this, like you're struggling with it. But we don't want it to be so heavy that you get to number 8 and you're like, I can't do it anymore. Does that make sense? Right? So that's there. For your plans, if you're new at this, you're kind of just taking an educated guess. You're saying, this is the exercise, how much do I think I can lift? And you try it out for the first couple times, and if it's too much, you drop the weight. If it's too little, you add weight, and you're just trying to adjust. It's kind of like an educated guess system when you first start out. However, if you want to do it more accurately, if you've done your 1 repetition max, so professional athletes, they'll find their 1 rep max for their squat. How much can I lift one time standing up? And what they'll use a percentage of that to figure out how much they're going to lift. So let's say that I could lift 100 pounds over my head. 100 pounds exactly. If it was 101, I can't do it at all. And if it's 99, well, I could do it more than one time. Okay, so 100 pounds, I can lift one time over my head, one time only. Well, if I want to work on muscular endurance, I would lift 40 to 60% of that weight. So I'd lift somewhere between 40 and 60 pounds over my head to work on muscular endurance. If I wanted to work on muscular strength, I would simply do over 75%. So I'd lift 75 pounds or more to work on muscular strength. Does that make sense? Muscular strength, we tend to lift a little bit more weight. Muscular endurance, we tend to lift a little less weight. But for general health purposes, you don't have to use this. I would say just kind of pick a weight and start there and then kind of gauge it on how many times you're trying to lift it. Is it hard at the end of it? Cool, you're probably about right. And then we'll adjust over time. What's the first T stand for? Time. Yeah, so it's time. So in cardiorespiratory endurance, it was literally how many minutes were you going to do it? 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes? We do not use the number of minutes that you're going to work out when it comes to muscular strength and endurance. You saying that you're going to lift weights for 30 minutes, cool. That could mean that you actually physically lifted weights for 30 minutes, even though I doubt it. Or that could mean that you lifted for maybe a total of 2 minutes, depending on how we do it. There are people that are at the gym for 2 hours, and you could do that entire workout in 30, 40 minutes if you did it a different way. So we can't use the amount of time we're there, how much time we're lifting. So the way we measure our time when it comes to muscular strength and endurance is literally how many times do you move the weight? How many times do you remove the resistance? So we measure that in what we call reps and sets. Repetitions is one movement pattern. So if I say I'm going to do 1 rep of a squat, or it would basically be going down and sitting in a chair one time and standing up. That's 1 repetition, 1 movement pattern. 1 bicep curl is basically taking my food and bringing it to my mouth and then putting it back down. That would be 1 repetition. Does that make sense? So from there, we're going to do between 8 and 12 repetitions of each exercise. And so a group of repetitions is what we call a set. Okay, a group of repetitions is called a set. And in a set, let's say I'm going to do 10 repetitions of something. It means I'm going to do it 10 times in a row without stopping. So if I'm going to sit down and stand up out of a chair 10 times, well, cool, I'm going to do that without stopping. 1, 2, and we're just going to keep going until I get to 10. And then after those sets of repetitions, we're going to take a small break. Are you guys following so far? For some of you, I know this is pretty simple. Some of you might not have heard of it before. So each exercise you do, you're going to do between 8 and 12 repetitions. And you're going to do between 1 and 3 sets for each exercise. So if you're a beginner, you're probably going to do 1 set of each exercise. As you progress, you'll do 2 or 3 sets. With repetitions, if you're wanting to work on muscular strength, you're going to be at closer to the lower end, 8. If you're working on endurance, you'd be closer to the 12. But as long as you're in that 8 to 12, you'll get general health from doing that. Realize these repetitions can change if you want to become more advanced, work more on strength or more endurance. But for general health, 8 to 12 is good, and 1 to 3 sets for each exercise. Realize between each set and between each type of exercise you do want to allow your body to rest and recover so your muscles can do the most work that they can. Rest is important, and this is the reason we can't simply use time. If I am working on muscular endurance, do I want a large amount or a short amount of rest between every exercise and every set? If I'm working on muscular endurance. We want a short amount of rest when it comes to muscular endurance. We want to basically don't give our muscles a lot of time to rest because we want to keep them slightly fatigued to build how long they can go. So how much time do you think you would allow between sets if we were working on muscular endurance?
30 seconds.
30 seconds to a minute is pretty reasonable. If I wanted to work on muscular strength, is that time going to get longer or shorter? It's going to get longer because we want our muscles to recover more so we can lift more. So how long might rest be if I'm working on muscular strength? Do what? So typically we'd say true muscular strength would probably be somewhere between 2 and 3 minutes for general health purposes. In extreme circumstances, like when we're talking professional athletes, if they're working on strength, it could be up to 5 minutes. They're kind of not lifting things, just kind of walking around the gym or sitting there letting their muscles recover. Okay? Make sense? So we have that going on. And then what's the final T for? Like frequency, intensity, time, and
Type.
we went technique. I like it. Bigger word. It was type. Type. And so we had that one slide labeled type, so it's a little bit different of a type. So when it comes to type in programming, okay, we're saying that your type is literally the exercises you're going to do. What exercise are you specifically going to do? And when we talk about it, because we're only doing it 2 or 3 days per week, we need to make sure we have enough exercises to work out most, if not all, the muscles in my body. This can be achieved in somewhere between 8 and 10 exercises. If you do less than 8 exercises, you probably didn't work out most of the muscles in your body. Can you do more than 10 exercises to work out all the muscles in your body? Yeah, but people tend to not want to be in the gym that long, right? So what we have is we say in between 8 to 10 exercises, you want to work out your entire body in 8 to 10 exercises. And so the areas that you'd want to kind of look at to make sure you worked out would be things like your neck, your upper back, your shoulders, your arms, let's see, what order is it going? Your chest, your abdomen, your lower back, okay? You've got your thighs, you've got your butt, and you've got your calves. Now, you might be counting that up and you're saying, well, that seems more than 8 to 10. Well, some exercises work out multiple things. So a squat, for an example. A squat works out our quadriceps, the front of our legs, but it also usually works out our butt as well, if we do it correctly. Rowing. Yeah, we may use our biceps and we may use our upper back when it comes to rowing, right? A rowing machine type thing with weights, not like your one that you're going to stay on for 20 minutes, but actually moving some weight. So yeah, there are multiple exercises, but we can do it in 8 to 10. You can do it in more, that's okay, but you can do it in 8 to 10 as well. Realize when it comes to our types and the exercise we're doing, first of all, make sure that you look at opposing muscle groups. So sometimes what people do is they forget that in your arm, you have the front of your arm, your bicep, and the back of your arm, your tricep. You need to make sure that you work out both of those. And it's going to take different exercises. Your biceps brings things to you. It's like what we used to eat. Okay? Your tricep is what pushes things away, like just say no to smoking. You see what I did there for the health class, right? Like just threw that in there nice and solid. So it's pushing things away. So we're going to have to use those differently. We want to make sure we work both the front and the back. Or with our legs, the quadriceps in the front. Your quadriceps, what they do is they help straighten your leg out, where the hamstrings bring your leg back to you, like curl your leg. Does that make sense? Have to make sure you work those out. Also, make sure that you do work out your upper and lower body, okay? You all have seen that person, you know who I'm talking about. Like they're sitting in class and you're like, man, that dude works out a ton. He's got a big old upper body and you're like, God, that's crazy. And then class is over and he stands up and you're like, you look at his legs and you're like, where did they go? Right? Like he's got these tiny little chicken legs on this giant upper frame. You're like, he's going to blow something out, right? He's going to break a leg because they're not there. And what happens is he forgot to work out his lower body, right? Or sometimes you see people from the front and you're like, man, that guy works out a ton. Like he's huge. And then he turns around and he's got like no calves, no butt, like no back muscles at all. And what happened is he literally went to the gym and he stood in front of a mirror and he just worked out the muscles he could see. Either one of those scenarios I just said leaves muscles weak and actually can lead you to injury, and it's not healthy. Does that make sense? So make sure you work out all your muscle groups. And then finally realize the order that you do the exercises matters. The order you do the exercises matter. We need to make sure that you do the exercises that work out the most muscles first and the ones that work out the least amount of muscles last. So an example of this is squat, right? We've done the squat a lot in here, right? Works out my quadriceps and my glutes, right? And then let's say we have the calf raise, right? Calf raise, literally I'm just using my calves to raise up. What muscle does the calf raise use? Or muscles does the calf raise use? It's calves, it's in the name, right? I kind of gave it away, right? Which one of those exercises would I want to do first in a workout? You guys all agree? Squat? So we want to do the squat before we do our calf raises. The reason for that is if I do calf raises first and my calves get tired, and then all of a sudden I go to do squats, well, I'm going to get to squats and I'm going to feel like I'm really weak, and I'm like, I can't do what I did yesterday, or I can't do what I did last week. Is that because my muscle, like my quadriceps and my butt, are tired and can't lift as much? No, it's because my calves are tired and they're keeping my other muscles from being able to get a good workout in. Does that make sense? So exercise order matters. So largest to smallest. Some things are a toss-up. Some things are very clear what you should be working out versus others. Does that make sense? Does this all make sense? You guys have questions about the FIT principle? So cool. You guys will have a third lab due this week. Lab 8. Okay? Lab 8 will be due this week. Lab 8 is very similar to Lab 5. Okay? Lab 8 is you're going to make a 1 week workout plan for You're going to make a 1 week workout plan for muscular strength and endurance. It will be different than your workout plan for cardiorespiratory endurance. Make sure for that 1 week workout plan, you cover all the FIT principles for muscular strength and endurance. Do it for general health purposes. If you want to do it for more than general health purposes, maybe you've been working out and you want to do something a little bit more complex, that's fine, but you will be graded like you know exactly what you're doing. Does that make sense? So I tend to tell students to keep it simple. So tell me frequency, what days you're going to do, and list out specifically what days. Don't just say 2 or 3 days per week. I can read my PowerPoint. You will get 0 for that, right? Tell me what day so I can see. Tell me, from there, I would go down to type and tell me what actual exercise are you going to do. Name them. You could use a squat as an example. We've used that in here. Feel free to use that. That's fine. Tell me those exercises. If you're not sure that I know the name, put it down there and put a little description beside it. Or I know a lot of exercises, probably know what it is. Feel free to use whatever is there. Make sure that you work out all the major areas of your body. Okay, it can be more than 10 exercises if you need to. Doubt you can do it in less than 8. But list those exercises and put them in the correct order because I'll be looking. Largest to smallest, right? Some are a toss-up, and that's okay. I understand that. But there should be some obvious things that kind of go first and last. Realize abdominal work, crunches, that type of thing, typically always comes last. Hint for the day. Because you're only using your abdomen, and that can affect all your other exercises. After you list those exercises, tell me how many times you're going to do that. How many reps and sets you're going to do each exercise. And then finally from there, tell me how much you're actually going to move. Don't tell me 40%, 50% of your max unless you can tell me how much you're lifting in that particular exercise already. Use an estimation of how much you think you can lift. Use something that is reasonable, right? If I'm going to do a bicep curl like this, how much would be something reasonably that you could do a bicep curl with? How much weight? How much weight do you think? Yeah, give a shot. How much weight? 25 pounds. Does that seem reasonable? Yeah, that seems pretty reasonable. If you'd have said 250, does that seem reasonable? No, right? So these are the kinds of things. You're making a guess. Some of you might know, right? So pick a weight. Or if I'm doing a push-up, do I still have a resistance doing a push-up? Do I have an intensity when it comes to doing a push-up? What is that intensity? Body weight. List body weight so I know that that's what you're planning on doing. Does that make sense? This will be your workout plan. You can do it in Word, you can do it in Excel, whatever. Doesn't really matter. But that's what your lab is. Questions on that?
So we have 3 labs?
Yep. Yeah, 6, 7, and 8. All that will be due Sunday at 11 p.m. Yep. Good question.
So, like, large to small?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So making sure that you're doing exercise that use more muscles before you do ones that use less muscles. One resource I will give you guys that can help you in case you're not as familiar with exercise, or even if you are. Maybe you don't know what a workout is that works out your abdomen or your lower back. A good resource to use is called exrx.com. Exerciseprescription.com. You can literally go on there, and in the columns and stuff, the website changed a good bit, but you can go in there and actually say, I want to know exercises. Like you'll say, like, click on these exercises, and it'll break exercises down to what muscle groups do they actually use. Like you're like, ooh, I want to work out my lower back. You click it, gives you a list of exercises, and you click those. It'll actually show you how and tell you how to actually do them. So it's a good resource for this particular lab. We good? Awesome. So we kind of have that out of the way, and you guys get out of here in about, 5 minutes or so, it looks like. So with that being said, when it comes to it, there is a warm-up and cool-down that we have to do for this, just like we have to do for cardiorespiratory endurance. It's pretty much the same guidelines, the same time frame, 5 to 10 minutes for each. Warm-up, similar to that of cardiorespiratory endurance, or we can even use lighter weight. So if I'm going to be lifting stuff up over my head and I'm going to be using 75 pounds, a warm-up could be using 10 or 20 pounds. Cooling down is simply a good time to relax and let the body come back to rest and maybe walking around a little bit. And it's also a great time to do those stretches that we've talked about, static stretches or other types of stretches as well. And we'll talk more about those in our next chapter of flexibility. So how do we progress? Well, when it comes to progressing and making things harder, always start lighter than you think you might want to, because we don't want to cause an injury. We want to make sure that you can do it correctly and work your way up to it. From there, as we progress, the easiest way to talk about this is by doing what we call the 2-for-2 method, which is where if I want to lift something over my head 10 times today, right? And so it's going to be hard. But as I get stronger, those 10 are going to become easier. And so all of a sudden I can get an 11th one day, right? And so I keep lifting it 11 times now. And then in a couple more weeks, I'm able to do it 12 times. Well, when I can, let's say my goal is to lift something 10 times, and I can do it 2 more times than that, right? So I can lift it 12 times. I do that for 2 consecutive workouts. I'm ready to go up. I'm ready to go up. And what we would do is we'd go up about 5%. So if I was lifting 100 pounds, we'd go up to about 105. Does that make sense?